Why are you here in this strange, fragile body, feeling, hurting, longing? Not by accident. You were chosen so existence could recognize itself through you. Listen closely. Your life is not a mistake. There's a question that is older than language. Not only what is the universe, but why would the universe need to know itself? To ask this is to step into a paradox, for everything that is asks in the simplest, most profound way to be witnessed. Rocks exist without complaint, stars burn without grief, and yet somehow the cosmos desired an instrument that could notice, suffer, adore, and name. That instrument is the human being. Think of awareness as a kind of echo. It needs a wall. Consciousness, however boundless, required a surface to reflect off of, so that it might learn the shape of itself. The human condition provides that surface. A human heart can bruise and still sing. A human mind can doubt and still invent. A human body can die and still hold meaning. It is through the human voice, trembling with fear, breaking with grief, rising in laughter, that existence can hear the contour of its own depths. This is not to suggest the human is superior to stone or star. It is to suggest an intimate functional relationship. The universe in its vastness lacks one thing: the intimate, particular perspective that can hold contradiction and paradox and still be present. Stars are luminous. Humans are luminous with questions. Those questions are not annoyances to a greater intelligence. They are the very mechanism by which deeper intelligences learn what they have become. To be human is to be constitutively interlocutory. Your life is a conversation between the inner and outer, between your small self and the larger field. That conversation is the hidden asking. Existence speaks, you respond. You speak, existence hears. Knowing is not complete until it is voiced. The form of being human, with its suffering, joy, creativity, and limitation, is the world's microphone. Through your grief, the cosmos learns compassion. Through your wonder, it remembers beauty. Through your moral choices, it learns ethics. Through your love, it feels itself reflected back. This function explains something essential about the intensity of the human predicament. If you feel burdened by the weight of meaning, if your prayer seems to catch on stone and echo back as silence, recognize this: you are not malfunctioning. You are fulfilling a role. When a human loves fiercely, experiences betrayal, or forgives, something in existence shifts, not superficially, but in its capacity to recognize itself in new tones. So when you ask, "Why was I given this life?" the answer resides partly in service rather than privilege. You were given the capacity to notice. More than that, you were given the capacity to transform noticing into being. Attention is not neutral. It molds reality. By choosing to feel deeply, you are participating in an evolutionary experiment where experience itself becomes a teacher of the whole. In that way, your life matters not only to you but to existence. Because the human voice is unique, the lessons it delivers are particular. The way you break and piece yourself back together will be instruction to the field. Every act of moral courage, every moment of honesty, every admission of vulnerability adds to the vocabulary existence uses to understand itself. If the universe were an unending soliloquy, there would be no transformation. It needs interlocutors. You are one of them. Do not mistake this role for easy purpose. The human instrument requires conflict and limitation to produce resonance. A sculptor cannot reveal the statue without first suffocating the stone in struggles of chisel and hammer, nor can consciousness articulate depth without the friction of constraint. Your limits, your losses, misunderstandings, and moments of impotence are not mere errors. They are the sensory apparatus through which more complex forms of knowing come to be. This realization changes the tone of complaint to something like devotion. It converts the question, "Why me?" into "What am I being asked to witness?" This is a practical alchemy. When your suffering is reframed as participation, your actions become more measured, less reactive, and more aligned with the deeper currents moving through you. It is in the quiet acceptance of your role that potency grows. Finally, the human voice is not only about pain, it is also about ecstatic recognition. To be human is to stand under a sudden moon and feel an order that outstrips explanation. To watch a child take a first step and know in a cellular way that existence prefers novelty. To allow yourself to delight in these moments is also to be a teacher. Joy teaches the universe resilience. Gratitude teaches it recurrence. The totality of your experience, the heartbreak and the ecstasy, is the grammar through which existence composes meaning. If you listen, then beyond the petty urgencies of daily life, You will hear an invitation, not to heroic suffering, but to conscious participation. The real reason you exist is not only so you may survive, but so that existence may be known in its fullness. Your life is a stanza in an enormous song. Sing it, speak honestly. Notice with rigor. As you do, the universe listens, and in listening it learns the clue. Before the first inhale, before the first name, there is an archival silence where the soul negotiates its course. The idea of a pre-birth agreement is less a myth and more a metaphor for the deeper reality. That meaning presupposes choice. Something in you, prior to your current embodiment, elected to undergo specific trials and to carry particular residues. We can imagine it as a curriculum, a sequence of lessons, experiences, and relationships selected not haphazardly, but for their capacity to refine awareness. In such a frame, life ceases to be an arbitrary barrage of random facts and becomes a designed course of study. Each person on your path is a teacher, each failure a graded exam, each pleasure an affirmation that you have passed a certain assessment. This metaphorical contract is not deterministic. It is intentional. You choose themes, not scripts. You choose the archetypes you will meet: lover, betrayer, mentor, child, not in rigid detail but in general shape. The soul's intelligence understands through contrasts and so designs dilemmas that will push it toward integration. How does one reconcile autonomy with this presumed design? The agreement does not compel you slavishly. It names tendencies and invitations. Within the frame of the curriculum, you remain free to respond, and that response is the essence of learning. Two students can be presented with the same problem and graduate with different wisdom. The soul's pre-birth choosing is like electing the course catalog. What you do with registration remains an act of freedom. This notion reframes suffering as part of a meaningful pedagogy. If you have been struck by loss repeatedly, perhaps your soul chose to learn depth of devotion. If trust has betrayed you again and again, perhaps your assignment is to discover the architecture of healthy boundaries. These aren't moral verdicts that shame. They are diagnostic maps that offer purpose to pattern. The practical consequence of this is radical responsibility. If you accept the curriculum metaphor, you begin to read your experiences as clues. You stop seeing obstacles simply as enemies and start seeing them as syllabus, calls to specific kinds of growth. That doesn't make pain trivial. It dignifies it. It suggests that pain, rightly interpreted, is not meaninglessness but meaning in action. This perspective also liberates the imagination. If you selected themes regardless of the cause, you can also renegotiate your engagement with them. The curriculum is not a sentence. It is a negotiation. You can return to the arc and choose different responses. You can enroll in the next course with more awareness. The pre-birth contract includes the faculty of reinterpretation. The soul learns most when it is self-authoring. Notice what shifts when you operate from the curriculum frame. Fear diminishes because confusion is reduced. Choices become discernible because they align with a broader set of aims. You are no longer only reacting to circumstance. You are fulfilling a chosen work. This empowers moral agency. You are invited to steward the storyline, to become conscious auteur rather than incidental character. We must caution against heroic distortions. The curriculum does not glorify suffering nor glamorize hardship. It merely suggests that the raw materials of pain can be transmuted into wisdom. The soul's choices before birth often involve complex trade-offs: intensity for growth, limitation for perspective. This choice is not masochistic. It is strategic. You traded ease for capacity. Finally, the pre-birth agreement reveals the ethical implication of your life. If you recognize that you chose certain lessons, then your response becomes a moral act with cosmic reverberation. Owning your curriculum is not fatalism. It is a call to integrity. Live your part with presence. Do not waste the curriculum on distraction or self-pity. Take your appointment to grow seriously and tenderly. Thus, when you feel overwhelmed, remember you have been enrolled in a course of becoming. Your suffering is not an accident but a classroom. Your survival is not the sole metric, development is. In that light, you are not a passive patient of fate but a co-creator of destiny. One who once signed up for the work and now has the honor and responsibility to complete it. To enter the human realm is to step into a theater of deliberate forgetting. The veil is not an error in the cosmic plan but a pedagogical device. Memory, if fully intact, would render life a replay of known outcomes and abolish authentic learning. The soul, to truly test itself, accepts amnesia. It trades the comfort of omniscience for the humility of discovery. There is a profound mercy in this wiping. Imagine the weight of knowing every possible consequence before you act. Paralysis would replace choice. The joy of surprise would be lost. These are not secondary values. They are the pattern's core. The human soul volunteers to be surprised so that triumph and defeat might both carry real taste. The theater of forgetting allows for a fully lived plot with stakes that matter. This forgetting generates a radical condition, the need for meaning-making. In the absence of pure recollection, the human soul constructs narrative. Narrative is the soul's tool for rebinding scattered experiences into coherent truth. You were given a blank page not as punishment but as invitation, to author, not to recall. This act of authorship is essential to maturity. You learn to recognize yourself by reading the lines you have written in action. Yet amnesia is also costly. It produces an existential loneliness, the sense that the ground of being has vanished underfoot. This loneliness is not merely emotional, it is ontological, a wound that drives much of human striving. That wound is precisely why longing often feels like homesickness. You are trying to relocate what you once knew, but the soul's task is not to lament the loss but to use longing as a compass. The theater produces stages: the child's curiosity, the adolescent's rebellion, the midlife crisis, the elder's consolidation. Each stage is a dramaturgical device to reawaken memory piece by piece. Memory is not restored by sudden recall but by patterned rehearsal. Love may remind you, suffering may remind you, acts of devotion may remind you. The theater's method is slow and exacting. How practically does one live within this theater and not despair? First, treat your amnesia as a kind friend. It ensures your life has meaning by forcing you to choose. Second, develop practices that are memory glimpsers: silence, art, ritual, presence. These are the instruments by which the veil thins. Third, pay attention to pattern, symbol, and synchronicity. They are the devilishly clever props thrown on stage to awaken latent recall. There is also an ethical dimension. If forgetting is mercy, then acts of conscious remembrance become sacred. When you extend forgiveness, tell the truth, and open to love, you are inviting memory to return. You are replicating the conditions that produced your initial consent to incarnate. In other words, you are answering the original calling. This makes everyday acts into spiritual technologies. One cannot push the veil aside by force. That is the theater's rule. Memory re-enters gradually like dawn. The practice is one of patient attention, repeated humility, and disciplined surrender. Each small remembrance, an instance of felt interconnectedness, a sudden recognition of life's pattern, is a stitch. Over time, stitches accumulate and the garment of recollection warms the body. Finally, the theater of forgetting reframes failure and shame. They are not verdicts but dramaturgical necessities. The soul chooses scenes that allow humiliation and embarrassment, because these scenes often produce the deepest, hardest-earned empathy. In those moments, the soul's compassion grows proportionately to the wound. This is the strange and holy arithmetic of human becoming. Live, then, with the awareness that forgetting was not a theft but a gift. It made your life possible as a meaningful plot rather than a static memory. Use longing as a map. Seek the small openings where memory slips in, and treat the theater with reverence. You are not only an actor, you are a witness and always an audience for what is being learned through you. Every relationship you enter is a mirror, every event a reflective text. The world does not operate merely as a set of objective conditions. It functions as a pedagogue that reflects back the contours of your inner life. This is not poetic metaphor alone, it is psychological law. For things to change outside, the lens inside must be adjusted. Consider how certain people evoke immediate reactions in you that seem disproportionate to the circumstances. That is the mirror effect. Something in the other triggers an unresolved echo in you. When you notice anger that feels ancient, you are seeing an old pattern projecting itself outward. The work is not to punish the mirror but to clean it. When you do, the reflection clarifies. The mirror is merciless in its honesty. It returns your posture, not your intentions. If you approach life guardedly, guarded situations form. If you expect betrayal, you attract ambiguous loyalty. If you love with scarcity, you meet that scarcity mirrored. This is why inner transformation is the highest political act. When you change your soul, the field of reflection shifts. Tools for mirror work are practical and often mundane. Start with owning your triggers. When you react, pause and ask, what in me is activated by this? Keep a trigger journal. Name the feeling. Trace it to its earliest memory and then rehearse a new response. Repetition transforms pattern. In time, the reflection changes because the actor has altered technique. Shadow acknowledgement is also mirror work. Many of our most automatic projections come from disowned parts. When you identify the trait you despise in others and turn it inward, you begin the slow reclamation of that shadow. This reduces projection and clarifies relationships. As you retrieve those parts, your world's reflection softens. The mirror does not only function for repair, it educates imagination. Often you will meet people who model capacities you yearn for: courage, tenderness, clarity. Their presence is not random. It is an invitation to cultivate those qualities in yourself. You can use external models as primers for inner growth. Emulate, internalize, and then surpass. There is also a social dimension. When many individuals change their interior lens, group culture shifts. One person's transformation influences others and sets new expectations. The mirror is both personal and communal. Leaders who embody presence influence entire organizations. Parents who recover from their wounds give children different reflections to work with. This is why inner work is not solipsistic, it is civic. Finally, understand the mirror's ultimatum. It gives you back a world that matches your inner coherence. If you want a kinder world, become kinder. If you want a world with more beauty, cultivate beauty within. The mirror does not tell you how to be moral. It simply demonstrates the cost of incoherence. Align inside and the reflection becomes life-worthier. Accept the mirror not as enemy but as faithful teacher. When you scan your life for its returning image, you will find a curriculum designed for your unique maturation. Embrace it. Learn its grammar. Then watch how the world adjusts to the depth of your seeing. Awakening is not a polite arrival. It is often a furnace. Many people imagine illumination as soft dawn, but the real dawn for the soul can arrive in sudden, scorching clarity. Pain is the fuel and shadow is the raw material being transmuted. The human crucible refines what courage and compassion can be. Pain announces that something must change. It is honest, blunt, and unnegotiable. When you experience heartbreak, illness, failure, or loss, the surface comforts of your life are stripped away. In that void, pretense cannot survive. The ego's stories lose their persuasive force. You are forced to confront what is underneath: fear, dependence, shame, or a hollow that masqueraded as identity. This is where shadow work becomes indispensable. The shadow contains the parts of you you would rather not admit: envy, greed, selfishness, or timidity. Pain brings these up to the surface not to punish but to integrate. In the crucible, you are offered a choice: deny and repeat the pattern, or feel, understand, and reorganize your soul's architecture. The method of rebirth is disciplined presence. Suffering without judgment is the raw alchemy. Sit with the ache, name it. Allow it to reveal the belief that sustains it. For example, a panic attack often carries a hidden script: if I am not perfect, I will be condemned. When you see the script, it loses some of its automatic power. You can choose differently. There is also an ethical turn in this fire. When you bear witness to your own capacity for harm, when you admit your complicity in patterns that hurt others, you open the possibility of repair. Repair enlarges heart and responsibility. The reborn self is not only internally integrated, it is socially accountable. Remember, rebirth is gradual. The first gesture of awakening may feel small: a silence in response to old anger, a moment of kindness where you would have been cruel. But those adjustments accumulate. The old scripts, when stalled by new actions, begin to atrophy. The nervous system learns different rhythms. The heart repatterns. Another key aspect is tenderness. Fire that burns without tenderness leaves scars of bitterness. The presence of compassion for yourself as you pass through pain ensures the transmutation yields gold rather than ash. Speak to yourself with the voice you would use for a child. Wakeful compassion is the mortar that holds the rebuilt self. This rebirth also reorients purpose. After being refined by fire, trivial ambitions fall away. The soul chooses differently. Success is measured less by accumulation and more by fidelity, to truth, to love, to presence. The self that emerges is less brittle and more capacious. Finally, remember the communal import. Those who have passed through their own fires become sanctuaries for others. Survivors often bear a luminous compassion because they have sat once in the furnace and not been consumed. In that resonance, you find your service. Not to avoid pain for others, but to show presence while they pass through it. Awakening is violent and gentle by turns. It requires courage to endure and humility to learn. If you accept the furnace, let it remodel rather than deform you. The pain is not an enemy. It is a teacher with an unforgiving but necessary curriculum.
Having passed through the stages, chosen instrument, pre-birth curriculum, theater of forgetting, mirror education, and the crucible of awakening, you arrive at a horizon, the possibility of return by choice.
This return is not flight from life but an intentional inhabiting of it. It is to remember, not as nostalgia for eternity, but as an action that transforms the present. To return by choice is to live with purpose. Purpose here is not ambition. It is fidelity to the unique imprint of your soul. It is to steward the talents and wounds you carry so that they weave into a life that speaks back to the universe in an eloquent voice. This is the pinnacle of the human assignment, to be a conscious mouthpiece for existence. How do you live intentionally? Start small. Align daily practices with your deepest values. Let decisions be guided by, does this reflect the kind of person I came here to become? Over time, choices gather into character, and character into destiny. Intention converts random activity into meaningful contribution. A crucial element is consent. Continue to renew the agreement you once made. Each morning, say the small yes. Notice your commitments and let them reflect your chosen course. Refuse distractions that steal your narrative. The pre-birth contract was an invitation. Living intentionally is its acceptance. Cultivate presence as your operative tool. Presence makes your action conscious rather than automatic. It turns casual kindness into sacrament, work into craft, and relationships into laboratories of truth. Presence is the validator of purpose. If you are present, you can test whether your actions carry the signature you promised before birth. Another dimension of return is generosity. When you remember why you chose this life, you naturally become more inclined to serve. Service is not self-erasure. It is the expansion of identity. When you give time, attention, or resources to the world in ways that reflect your purpose, you complete the cycle. The universe learns through you, and you learn through the universe. Embrace the paradox of limitation and freedom. Human finitude is the ground from which creativity springs. When you accept limits, time, mortality, skill, you harness concentration. You become decisive. The freedom of the soul is not boundless license. It is the disciplined capacity to choose the particular and love it. Finally, be humble about outcomes. Intentional living does not guarantee comfort or success in conventional metrics. It guarantees coherence and depth. That is the trade, a life of surface comfort or a life of authentic meaning. Most who choose the latter would not trade it back. Return by choice is the end and the beginning. It is the return to responsibility and the commencement of a sustained practice of presence. Remember the initial yes. Each act of attention, each chosen discomfort, each sustained devotion is a reenactment of that original consent. You were chosen to be human. Now choose to be exact with that choice. Live deliberately, love fiercely, act with humility and boldness. Let your life become testimony to the truth that existence learns when you speak, that the cosmos remaps itself when you notice, and that the real reason you exist is to be the attentive eye of being looking back at itself.